Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to Andy and Jen Talk About Stuff. I'm Andy.
I'm Jen.
And today we're going to talk about stuff. The stuff we're going to talk about today is the album You Get What You Get. And this is mostly your adventure to and from Nashville several times to record the album that was put on your heart after the collapse of 2008 and 9 and that crazy season in our life. So, ready to get into it?
Sure.
Let's go.
So what ended up happening was based off of the music that the Lord had asked me to write from 30 years old on. We had the kids. We went a couple years. That was what, 2007, 8, maybe?
Well, Kate's in 05, Jill's 07, Claire's in 09.
I turned 30 in 08.
Anyway.
So we end up losing the house, moving into your parents' house, August of 11, and then that same summer, I ended up really hearing the Lord say, it's time to take this and turn it into an album. And in that time frame, we were still doing worship team. We were, our kids would have been 6, 4, and 2 at the time. And so I was elbow deep in raising littles, and I have the funnest audio recordings of the kids in the background as I'm piecing together these clips of songs being written at the time. That's my favorite memory. Those are my favorite memories from that time. Those songs came together in a time when I was working through all sorts of different emotions from being a mom and being a stay-at-home wife and trying to figure out how to reposition myself back into music and in the music industry. So there was a whole lot attached in that, but the Lord was very, very clear that we needed to take it to into the new season. Well, what happened and how this is the album cover. How this ended up happening was we were recording Jar of Hearts. Is it Christina Perri?
Yes.
At church, and that was recorded. Which that didn't happen ever. That was a rare thing that the church recorded any of the specials that we did. And Sam, a friend of ours, Sam, had taken that recording and sent it to
someone that he was following named Tyler Ward.
Thank you, on YouTube.
Yeah, but Tyler had basically a talent manager at the time who was connected to all the content that Tyler was making, and had essentially taken the version of what we got and sent it to him. And they were like, "Hey, do you guys want to do something?"
Yeah, with just a worship song. I don't mean just a worship song.
Well, no, done in that context.
Yes.
It was you singing Jar of Hearts in the context of a special to set up a message.
Yeah, through church.
And that version of that was sent is what they essentially just looked at and judged. And went, oh, this is someone we could do something with.
Right.
So that kind of kicked off the whole thing that ultimately became the album You Get What You Get.
Yes.
But I don't want to go to Tennessee yet.
So
I want to talk about how that happened, because we didn't just go to Tennessee right away.
No,
there was a process and all that.
Well, because of that video recording through church, Tyler Ward's people, they had producers in Colorado and in Tennessee, and they decided that they wanted to do some work with me and asked me to send them some original stuff. I sent them, I can't remember which song, but I sent them a song, and they decided that they wanted to have me come out, but they didn't want me to come to Denver. They wanted me to come to Nashville. Yeah. So that's really how that got going, and it was just at the time, it seemed like such a random happening, but as we went forward, and you and I, so what's crazy about this is, financially, at the time, we were definitely not in a position to be able to build an album by any means. So,
reminder: this is immediately after we had done the Cash for Keys. So if you missed our episode talking about the collapse of 2008 and 9, we came into this season of this album getting a spark and a breath of life right after us literally losing everything except for our relationship.
Yeah, our house, our
And
cars, everything.
Filing bankruptcy, losing it all, turning all of that stuff over, at least in the house part, giving the house back and handing the keys to the people that repossess it, and us moving to my parents' house, where it was like the future looked uncertain, I guess is the best way to summarize it for me. It wasn't like a clear path is ahead. Like, no, we have some work, but like, well, I don't know where this is going and how long it's going to take and all that. So enter the opportunity to go and sing and do this.
It truly did feel like the Lord telling Abraham, I just need you to get up and go. And we had no idea where we were going, who we were going to be involved in. We had never met any of these people. And what it turned out to be was God's story after God's story after God's story of how the finances were even gifted at times. Flights out there. I mean, Aunt Karen and Nancy, that was Aunt Karen had points.
Yep.
And flight points. And that was, I got you guys.
And one time she was in Tennessee and we met up with her while we were also out there, but for completely different purposes.
Right. So it was one thing after another where we just didn't know how any of the pieces were going to come into, how were we going to pay for most of it? The album cost in itself was so much less than what an album was actually going for at the time. And in that, we still had these amazing musicians and producers that were literally working with people like Katy Perry and Gunger, and I mean, all of them.
Yeah. Well, your lead producer is Jeremy, right? Yep. So Jeremy also worked with Fred, and I don't know if they had shared the role at the same time or not, but they were essentially the touring band directors for the Backstreet Boys during a time. And then Jeremy played with Kelly Clarkson, and he played bass with The Fray and
Matt
One
Carney
Republic
and
Matt Carney. Yeah, they both played for Matt Carney. When they came to San Diego, we went and saw them at a little amphitheater show they did. Fred has done a number of music pieces that are in commercial space as well as to support other mainstream musicians. They basically called in their friends who are these actual major people to be in part of what your project was. And that was completely, we didn't ask for that. It was completely unexpected, but like they delivered and brought it, and it was really cool.
Yeah, for them, it was probably hey, I know this guy. And for us, it was like we ended up with people like on this has several different points of just faith all over it. The writing of this album, let me backtrack. These guys, they were just bringing in their friends. For us, we were being given access to people that we were definitely not on the same level with and should never have had access to.
And I don't think that our dollar amount would have normally qualified if it weren't for Jeremy and Fred being friends with these people. I mean, to real quick put it in context, like Nathan, who played guitars on your album or played some of the guitars, like he was Katy Perry's touring guitarist. Yeah. Like that's his job. That was his job at the time. Or actually, right after you finished your album, he became her touring guitarist. It's like, this guy has other stuff to do, not like this. Not that it's a little piddly project.
It was. For these guys.
But for these guys and what they're compared to, like, they don't have to take on this kind of stuff. And they did. And we ended up with this amazing, like, deep bench of musicians, even including Jeremy's dad.
Yeah.
So, do you want to talk about that real quick?
This was a really fun happening, really, because Jeremy McCoy, his father is Larry McCoy, and we had no idea. Again, we were just blessed to be able to work with these guys. They're so talented and they're so humble, and it was really just such a gift to work with them, period. But then Jeremy calls and says, I feel like this song needs some keys and more than what Fred was bringing. And I forgot what song it was, but he goes, do you mind if my dad ends up playing on your album? Well, we find out his dad was Johnny Cash's keyboardist. Like, in this dude worked with Johnny Cash. So we're like, heck yeah, that's so cool.
What? This is crazy.
Yeah, it was really crazy. And then, what is in it?
It really just had to do with with style, and I think it
Yeah.
was Is You Is. I think it was your cover of Is You Is that was, because it has that like that kind of old timey chimey piano in it, and it was like kind of some twinkly, but it's a lot of finger dancing. Now I know Fred does that too.
Yeah,
but
Fred has
I
his
think
own ridiculous
Jeremy,
skill.
I remember Jeremy kind of, here's what's weird. Like his dad is like this guy who's like, oh yeah, I spent like part of my career being Johnny Cash's pianist and keyboardist on tour and in the studio. And he's like asking, hey, is it okay if my dad plays the solo on a couple of these tracks? You're like, yeah. What do you mean? Why are you asking?
Yeah.
Just go do it.
You know, another cool story was when, which one was it? Was it Good Girl? Where Jeremy says, this needs a horn section.
Yes.
And I'm sitting here going, okay, Lord.
How do we pay for that?
Exactly. How do we pay for that? We don't
How do we pay for live horns in the studio?
We didn't have the cash by any means. And so I said, okay, Jeremy, give me until Friday to be able to just pray about this, because we have to consider everything we're trying to save up for and whatever. And he goes, okay, that's cool. And I was in prayer, and the Lord, it was so funny. Jeremy calls us by Thursday and he goes, listen, I don't care if you pay me now. I don't care if you pay me ever. But I'm going to go ahead and have my guys come in and do the horn section on this. And he ends up offering this gift. We ended up paying for it, but it was still something that I asked for the Lord to tell us by Friday. Jeremy calls by Thursday and says, we're going to go ahead and do this. It's something it needs regardless of whether or not you're able to pay for it. So that was in itself one of my favorite blessings that the Lord brought our way with this album. It was so awesome.
It would have been a missing ingredient in like a cake recipe.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, this needs 4 eggs. We have 2. You're like, don't use the other 2. Like, no, you need all of them, right? And that is just one of those elements of the track where it had to be there, because you can't hear it without it now.
Well, Fred even played it on keys in the synth version, which was sweet. It sounded good still, but Jeremy really wanted the live, and I'm so thankful he did.
Yeah.
But that was one of, and then, so we went out the original time to record. We laid down some tracks, and then
some practice tracks to go, okay, can we work together? Can this all come together? That was on East Iris Drive.
Yeah.
Remember that? Every time the map, make a right on East Iris Drive.
Yeah, it was goofy, but it was such a cool thing. We went to this tiny little house studio, and it was so neat. And so that we got to meet the guys, but then I don't remember how many months later.
I don't remember the duration between that trip and the one where it was like, oh, let's just do the full album
I
thing.
want to say that was 2012.
I think it was. And that trip, I don't know if you're going to say this part or not, but right before we went back for the second time to do like the bulk of the album, they actually didn't have a place.
Yes, I was going to,
And then like the day or 2 days before,
like the day before,
they got a studio spot, and it was even better than the initial one.
It was at this mansion in like, was it not Brentwood or something like that? But it was in this amazing neighborhood where you go into this, behind this ginormous house, and in this basement, like this sucker wasn't a basement. It was the size of our apartment, probably.
It wasn't a basement. Yeah,
it was huge, and they ended up getting it. Then, so they lost their studio a couple days prior to us having to go out there.
Yeah,
and then it was the day before. I remember Jeremy saying, but we didn't find out until we had gotten out there that they didn't have a studio until the day before. But that's one of so many different things that the Lord just made work out.
This place was a legit studio. So the description of it being in a basement is just the physical location of its part in the building. The way it was decked out was like professional studio grade. One of the rooms, that should already tell you something. One of the rooms was the engineering room. The other room was a big kind of open space, wood floor, carpeted, padded, insulated room for isolated musical instruments or a group of instrumentalists to be playing at the same time. And then you still had the isolated vocal booth. Stuff, And I remember making a silly video. I hope I can find it for this, of where it was the isolation was so good like the pro level of this was like that scene in Ace Ventura when he's in the apartment and he's trying to solve the crime, and it's the double pane glass window and he's taking the glass door back and forth. Like I remember doing that on camera because I was being stupid. And I hope that I can share that with people in this episode because it was like that good.
It was special. Anyway, so yeah, that was a really neat happening in the way that studio came into play. And these guys, man, they were so good. I just sent them. So I don't play an instrument. I can plink my way through and find chords on the piano, but by no means do I play an instrument. So when I write, I use my audio recorder on my phone and just sing into it whatever idea comes to mind. And so I had just sent these guys just audio of my voice, and they took it and made it work. Each of these songs. So I think, what are there, 11 or 12 songs?
Yeah.
On the album, 3 of them are not my own.
Remakes, yeah.
They're remakes, and
the other 8 are original.
Other 8, I wrote, and the guys helped me compose. So it was a great process getting to write that with these guys.
We have some really neat pictures from back then. I'll make sure I overlay them here in this part of the show because there's some behind the scenes stuff you guys like working, figuring something out, playing with a different idea or a concept. And I also, for people who maybe have never been in this environment or had that experience, there's interplay. You don't always just show up and you know exactly what you're going to do. You do something, you know what would be cool here? This little thing here.
Yeah.
Or, you know what we thought was going to sound a certain way doesn't sound the way I want. Try it this way instead.
It takes a different turn.
And so sometimes that instruction's coming from them to you, like, hey, sing this part instead of that part, go to this note instead of that thing. And it really is a collective effort to cumulatively come up with the finished product. And it's not just like coming in with a game plan, 100% buttoned up, airtight, and then it works out. That's just not the way it goes.
Well, and the fun part too was that normally that process, especially because it was in such raw form, and I had written the majority by myself, and then I had to take it to these guys. They only had a very short time to play with this. So in the time that we went back out there, we only had a week span to actually, from writing to recording the entire album, we did in a week, which is not very common.
That's very uncommon, and without any song structure. So there's no music sheets. There's no like, hey, what's the tempo? Whatever tempo I sang it in. What key is it in? The one I sang it in, right?
Yeah.
What time signature? I don't know.
Yeah, and a lot of it I didn't know. And so that for me, and what, people listening, and if this is not something you work in, for me, it was I felt like I was floundering through so much of it because even though I grew up in music and we've always been in some sort of choir and, we're all musicians, and I just never, I never gravitated towards instruments. I love it. I can hear where it's going. The whole orchestra is playing in my brain, but how to relay that was such a difficult thing. However, I was just, as the Lord had given me the prompting to write this album, my biggest prayer was, Lord, bring me the people that are going to pull out of my head what's in my head and in my heart. And he did, very much so. And I remember sitting in this, the backyard as the guys were working on something and needed a bit of time. And I was sitting in the backyard, and this backyard had this huge expanse of green, just beautiful trees, ginormous. And I remember being out there, and there was this beautiful red cardinal that landed, and it was just green. It was the only bird in the backyard at the time. And I was just sitting and listening to the Lord. And this cardinal lands in this tree right in front of me, and I heard the Lord say, I will make you stand out in the world as this cardinal is standing out in amongst the midst of these trees. And I just chuckled at that because, I'm a mom of babies and we're married and I'm a stay-at-home mom and I'm not involved in this industry by any means. I have no idea how that's going to happen. I still have no idea how that's going to happen. And that was in how many years ago? 13 years ago that we really were working on this. And then there was this huge gust of wind that comes through the trees, and I heard the Lord say, I will move people in your favor as easily as I move these trees with the wind. And it was just such a overwhelming peace that came into my spirit, because I knew it wasn't about me in that at all. It was just, he knew my heart was for the sake of whatever he wanted me to do. And that gives segue into how and why the album was even written, and the place that it was coming from in my heart. And in that time, so I guess it's kind of TMI, but I'm going to be a little,
not on this show.
It's a little TMI in that if you're a new mom, and I was in all the moms groups that, everybody kind of talks through how your body feels. Like you kind of lose yourself. And it's a beautiful season. Don't get me wrong. I love it. I miss it so much now that we have young adults and a teenager, and our last little teenager. Having babies and being at home with them all the time, you tend to really sacrifice yourself, and you put yourself on the back burner. You don't have a life. It's all about the kids. It's all about the house. It's all about whatever you're creating in that for your family. And it's a blessing that we were able to do it. I'm so thankful that the Lord let us have that. It was a huge sacrifice on many levels financially, but for what it was, music was such a huge passion that to put that on the back burner and to become a stay-at-home mom and to lose my body in the way that I did, childbirth, stretching, and the going back and the muscle loss and all the things, for me, there are songs written from a place of self-loathing. Like, I just did not like myself. I did not like the way I looked. I wanted everything surgically replaced and fixed and tucked and whatever. And in fact, quite a few people in our tight circles were doing that, and to each his own. Like, everybody, I don't have anything against, surgery and, cosmetically repairing. That's your thing. If that's what you need, awesome. In fact, I wanted it done, very much so. I felt yuck. But I prayed knowing that my heart set was not in the right place when I wanted to fix myself through the self-loathing. I knew that wasn't a right heart set. So I really had to take that to the Lord and ask, if you want me to do this, then I need you to help me love myself in a way that I need you to change my mind about me. I need you to help me see me through your eyes. As you do that, when you're done with me, then if I still want surgery after I see myself through your eyes, then it comes from a place of healing and not from a place of just trying to fix something on the outside because the inside wasn't healed. That's what this album really came from. That came from lots of soul care that needed to be done in that season. And this album was really for my own healing. And now that he's bringing me into a new season of, hey, I need you to do it again. 13 years later, this new album is in pieces, and some of the songs are absolute skeletons, but they've got some structure to them. Some of them are just pieces. You've got an arm bone in there and a leg bone in there, and they're wonky, but the Lord is making this completely about him and soul care, just cherishing him through worship and speaking to the broken.
So there's a couple things here in this segment that I think are worth mentioning or noting. Your description of how you came to the table is very much like a jigsaw puzzle without the picture on the front. Because the picture's in your head.
Sure.
But like what you handed Fred and Jeremy, and this is to their credit, is you handed them all these pieces. Mm-hmm. Hey guys, here's all the pieces, and I know what it's supposed to look like up here. And they're like, oh, okay, we see it.
Well,
and we see it enough.
That's not exactly. It was pretty. The forms were pretty.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
There.
I'm not talking about your format and your structure. I'm saying the total character of everything. I'm saying that they were able to take this idea, not an unfinished idea, but translate. You had said earlier, translate your idea into the finished thing.
Sure.
And they were able to do that, and to their credit, to navigate all that and then stitch it together nicely. I think they did a great job.
They did an amazing job.
Yeah.
They really did, and they were so patient and just caring through the entire thing. And even in that, like, just the Lord brought us people who understood the mission behind it and saw the faith drive in the middle of it, which was such a beautiful thing to be able to have that. Hey, here's what the Lord gave me. Can you help us? And that was such an open door.
Yeah.
To be able to create through faith as well.
Yeah.
Which was fun.
The other thing I know that was important we had a hard time coming up with what the design should look like for the album cover. By the way, this was a CD. This was like, we had CDs pressed. Remember that? That was interesting.
Yeah.
So the design, I want to make sure I got this correctly. I think Aaron Kelly took your photo.
Kelly did,
Aaron Kelly took your cover photo.
Yep.
And then we didn't know how to nothing was working when I was trying to mess around in Photoshop, with the title. I'm like, okay, Gemini Cruz. And okay, you get what you get. And nothing was complimenting. And then I remember one day I was like, hey, write you get what you get out on a piece of paper, in a Sharpie. And so.
Well, yes, but that was also an inside joke for me too.
Yes.
Because that has always been something that you get what you get with me. I'm raw, I'm real, I'm not going to BS you. This is what I am. And because of that, when you were doing the album cover, that you get what you get just sat in who I am and what I'm about, that you're like, hey, write it in your writing.
Yes. I wanted it to be your handwriting because it is what you get. This is how it's going to look. It is going to be bold. It's going to have all this some pretty parts to it, but it's also going to be firm and bold. And all that comes through handwriting, not to get into handwriting linguistics. Is it called handwriting linguistics? Hey, if you know the terminology for handwriting analysis, put that in the bottom or in the comment here, because I don't know what that is. But whatever that study is called, was why that just lit one day, and I was like, oh, you need to write that. If we're gonna say you get what you get, then it needs to actually be in your writing and look the way you'd write it with that, press firmly. So Sharpie marker, white piece of paper. I remember scanning it, cutting out all the parts, and then kind of putting it there. I was like, oh wow, that is perfect.
Yeah,
it embodies the whole idea of what you made, because the whole you get what you get is the tonality of what you brought musically and what you wrote, but also it was kind of that was not their answer to you too musically, but it's hey, yeah, you're gonna get this, and it is gonna be what you get. You're gonna get what you get, and it's gonna be awesome.
Thanks, Captain.
No, but think about it. I'm not trying to be too deep here. I'm just saying that full circle 360. It is an entire you get what you get album and project.
Yeah, it is,
and it was awesome.
But and that's how we live our life. There is nothing different here than is different when you're coming at our, when you're sitting at our table. This is who we are all the time. And that's how music is for me too. That's what this album was. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens with this, but God's doing it again in this season.
I want to make sure before we go anywhere else in this conversation, we thank our parents. They played a critical part. Also our siblings, they played a part, whether it was just helping us and aiding us get to and from places, watching kids, helping out with kids. I mean, just there's so many other things that go together to send off the parents of 3 daughters to another state for an extended period of time to do something else and leave the 24 hours a day care of your 3 children to someone else.
Especially 3 littles.
So thank you for everyone who had helped us go into this pursuit to make that happen, because also without you, we're not going and doing that, or we have some other alternative, and it's our girls with someone who's not their grandparents or their aunts and uncles. So we love you all. Thank you for being a part of that, because you're very much a part of this as well.
Yeah. And even joining us in the fun of building the shows when we were done with the album. And that was a fun story, is even how...
Let's talk about that.
How Mike Vasquez was so good friends of ours. Mike was involved in radio for years.
Mike V. Yeah. Some people might know him still only as Mike V. Did you know his last name's Vasquez?
Thank you, Coach, for being such an instrumental part in really getting You Get What You Get on the radio. And that was funny in itself, because we didn't have any
promoter. He was the promoter.
He was the promoter. It was fun. He really helped us get that onto some, I guess, the top jazz stations in the United States.
Yep.
And nobody knows who I am, but it was such a fun, we're doing a radio show, and now we're going to go to LA and we're going to do another show. And so things that nobody would ever know. We got to do because the Lord said, "Hey, do you trust me? Are you going to step?"
And this is before it's like selfie in the studio, social media. We weren't doing that social media thing like that. You know, it was, oh, we're taking picture for like more our own enjoyment, not for sharing and promoting everything. I think I have one picture from the entire experience that I've shared on Instagram in the very beginning of my Instagram. It's like me sitting at a table inside the hotel room with my hat on, looking at my laptop, trying to work in between doing other stuff.
Sure.
Maybe that's not true. There is a picture of us from Cracker Barrel when we went and sat in the rocking chairs.
Yeah.
We
did catalog a lot of stuff. We got some good memories from it. But
yeah, I'm saying like when Mike was taking you to these like radio studios or the radio stations and you're doing the little hit piece or whatever, it wasn't like, hey, we're live Instagramming at the same time.
That we were doing. Mike knew other hosts on radio stations, and he did his magic and opened doors that we couldn't have walked through them. And Mike, at the time, we were only acquaintances really because of Debbie and Jesse. Mike is our friends, Debbie, her brother. And we just became really good friends over time, being able to work with Mike, but great family.
And you had, you had a couple of shows at a place that used to be called 98 Bottles. And I don't think 98 Bottles exists anymore. And it was, full band. And one of the things I distinctly remember is, well, there's a couple things I remember. The first is, Lucas Dominguez. So Lucas Dominguez is someone we'd known since high school. He came and played keys, kind of helped direct and, do the whole thing for all the musicians involved. And then I want to do a special shout out for Ian because, I don't know, 48 hours before a full show with 11 songs, all of a sudden now we're without a lead guitarist and someone to play the nylon parts and the electrical parts for your entire show. And Ian is like, I can do it. Yeah, we asked him if he could play, and he is that dude, that caliber. Like he can learn 11 songs in 48 hours and then come and play them with no music. Ian, it's ridiculous.
And Lucas were, again, people just came into what we were building and what we were releasing in such miraculous ways that we didn't have it 1 second, and then all of a sudden we did. And it was beautiful. So not to, pull this farther than it needs to go, it was just a beautiful faith project. And how God brought it together one step after the next was truly I don't know what tomorrow is, but I can handle today. And do you have the faith to trust me in today? And I'm going to give you your daily bread today, whether it was through the clothes on our back or the food in our mouths or the musicians that we needed for this project. Every single part of it, God took care of, and it solidified just that childlike faith that I function in now massively. That season was a huge builder in that.
Yeah, this is a really cool project for us, and I'm really glad that we have that. And I'm glad the girls have it too. It's fun for me to every once in a while I'll be rummaging through something, I find a CD, I'm like, oh man, this was actually in a CD, and then it comes up. I know a couple friends of ours who didn't know you actually had done an album before, had been introduced to it recently. So now we're 10 years removed from it actually airing. I think 2015 is when it actually aired.
Are you sure?
I think so. I know we did a lot of 12 and all that, but I think 2015 was the original.
Years, is when everything started.
Right. So I think I'm just saying, retroactively looking, it's neat to hear something kind of cycle through and go, oh, hey, I know that. Yeah. I remember that. I remember that song. I remember being there. So that's fun for me as your husband. And then the other thing is, I know that is a base case for what building an album can look like, but I think that because of our maturity and our age and our stage, what you're doing next is going to be just that much proportionally more outstanding. So I'm really excited for that.
We'll see. Only for the sake of how God, we'll see how God unravels the pieces to this new work. I think I'm most excited to see the people He brings together. Yeah. Because it's happening the exact same way in my brain. And the things that are coming out of this season are similar in that there is a lot of healing that's happened over the past couple of years alone. We've we'll go into this in another section, but it's coming out of, raising extra kids in the middle of having cancer and surgery and all those things. God really has surrounded us with community that's helped us in that. And faith, honestly, faith is the biggest driver of all of the things. And so this season of writing has been pulled really from just how huge and how wonderful and loving God is, because we've been through some pickles in the past couple years alone, and we could not have gotten through any of that if he didn't provide in every area of our life in the way that he did. And that's its own story. So,
yeah. Well, as we wrap this one up, if it's okay, I just want to shout out Jeremy and Fred one more time. So if you're watching any of our clips from this episode on Instagram, you can follow Jeremy at the J Baser, and you can follow Fred at Built by Titan. If you happen to be over there and you recognize some of those songs from a little channel called Dude Perfect, yeah, that is Fred. So he's been able to do that among a lot of other cool commercial stuff. So guys, we sincerely love you, and we still to this day talk about you and how you helped Jenn, which is also helping us. And even now, the simple act of sharing this story and giving context to it for our girls in this stage of their life versus when they were little itty bitties and what's mom off doing and all that, that's really cool. So thank you guys both very much.
Yes. Yeah, you guys are awesome. And I know you have amazing things that you're doing on your own. God bless those works to get into the hands of the people who need to hear what you got to do.
And we will be back. We're coming for you guys. Oh, maybe they're like, no, don't. All right. Well, any final thoughts of this episode, Jenn?
No, I'm just excited to see what's coming next. I think this is a really creative building season, and a lot of things are already starting to come into the works, and we have a lot of different talents in our corner. I'm really excited to see what the Lord helps us to build as we move into a new season.
Well, thank you again for another awesome episode of Andy and Jenn Talk About Stuff. I like doing this with you. Yeah. You look very pretty today, by the way. Your hair looks awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, you look neat. Sorry, I'm just borrowing that term from my British friends. You look very neat today. And thank you all for watching and supporting. We're just in the infancy stage of all this, and we really sincerely appreciate the text messages, the DMs, even the comments that you're making. Thanks for giving us space to share all this stuff too. And when you find something that kind of meets you where you're at or resonates with either a stage you have been in or one that you find yourself in now, you can reach out to us individually. We're usually tagging each other's accounts on Instagram as well, so you can reach us directly if you ever have a comment you want to share with us or a story or a takeaway. We want this to be as value-driven for you as it is for us.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the point of this is testimony, like what we learned and what we're continuing to learn, and what others can come alongside us and share their stories of how they've been grown and strengthened. That's really the point of this whole thing. So thanks for joining us.
All right. Well, thanks, Jenn. Have hope and be encouraged. We'll see you in the next episode.